It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All the sports news you need every day in under 20 minutes. Follow Locked On today on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome to the Locked On Wizards podcast. This is your host, Ed Oliver. Make sure you guys subscribe and give a nice rating to Locked On Wizards wherever you watch podcasts. So we have special guests today, the brothers on Locked On Wizards. How are you guys doing today? The Kaminsky brothers.
Yes, how are you?
What's up, man?
Can't complain, but this episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit rockauto.com and tell them Locked On sent you. So we're just going to talk about the new additions, of course, from the Lakers. Kuz, Trez, KCP. Will break those signings down, or that crazy 5-team trade. And then I do want to get you guys' thoughts on the fit of Russell Westbrook and how far you guys think you guys will go. But first, we'll start off with you guys' reaction to the trade and how do you guys think about the fit with Russ? Of course, everybody is very opinionated on that. I think nobody's really in the middle. There's everybody's either it's a terrible fit or a good fit. Where you?
This was not a shoulder shrug trade, Ed. This wasn't one of those like,
whatever. It's fine. It's funny, like, 'cause when the rumors first started going about this, Andy and I did a show, and it was, really in the response to it was, so it was huge. People were already thinking about it, have opinions right away. We both basically were like, this is not a good idea. Like, this is, there's more to Russ. There's the fit isn't great. It's kind of more than the Lakers might need was one of the things about it. And that's still true. The fit is really bad in some ways. The shooting makes no sense. Like the floor spacing, particularly at the time before the Lakers made all these free agent acquisitions, you pick up Malik Monk and Kendrick Nunn and Wayne Ellington and Carmelo Anthony, and you've just given yourselves a lot more options to be able to try to spread the floor around that group. The shooting would be an obvious problem. There's the problem of you need to have the ball in Russ's hands for him to be most effective. And when you already have LeBron James, that's potentially problematic, particularly in the playoffs. When, if I'm in the other team, I'd love to see Russ control more possessions than LeBron. That's just, as good as Russ is, that's a win. So there's that. But the flip side is there are things that Westbrook does really well that can help the Lakers. Obviously, the secondary, ball handler, ball mover around James, another playmaker, which they've been trying to do for a couple of years and hasn't really worked out. Like, they've got one of the ultimate dudes in Russ. So that should help LeBron a lot. And then the Lakers, who were excellent on the break when they won the title in 2020, were not good at it last year. They did not get up and down the floor, and Westbrook's going to make that much better too. So the things that Russ does well will help the Lakers a lot. The things that he doesn't won't. And I was just like, wow, I cannot believe they did this. It's very Lakery, Andy, but it's just like, wow.
Look, the Lakers are nothing if not a star bleeper organization. I mean, and I'm a Laker fan. I say this with all admiration and respect for what it's all brought, but that is their ethos. And Russ is as big a star as you're going to find in the league. So it's predictable in ways that are kind of funny that they would, draw themselves towards him, even though, like Brian talked about earlier, you could argue they're making this more complicated than necessary, even though Russ obviously is a talent upgrade over KCP, over Kuz, over Montrezl Harrell, over Buddy Hield, who the Lakers definitely had a deal in the works that they could have gone with instead of Russ, and that deal would have cost them fewer pieces and definitely would have been a cleaner fit. Like, it's much easier to implement Buddy Hield into what the Lakers do, and he fills more of a pressing need than Westbrook does. Westbrook basically triples and quadruples down on the stuff that they do well without necessarily addressing a lot of needs, other than one that I think he really can help with. The Lakers at the last couple of years, really in the LeBron era, have had these massive drop-offs offensively whenever LeBron is off the court. Like, sometimes he can be off the court, Ed, for like 90 seconds and everything falls to crap like pretty dramatically. And a lot of that is because the offense is basically built for LeBron to do everything. Like the system is LeBron. And in terms of replicating what LeBron does when he's off the court, there may be nobody in the league better equipped to do that than Russell Westbrook. So in that sense, I think he might actually address one area of need when LeBron isn't actually playing. Can you, if nothing else, just maintain status quo, if not actually, build on a potential lead, that sort of thing. Like that, that's an area where Russ can help.
Some stuff he can help. It was crazy that they did.
Oh.
I mean, it's just crazy that they did.
Yeah, both of us thought like, really? Like, really? You're really going to trade everybody for Russ? Like, really? But here we are.
Yeah, it is a Hollywood move. This is what the Lakers do. And you guys made some signings too. I wanted to ask you guys, do you guys think you're too old? You guys made a video about this too.
Yeah.
And, which of the signings that you guys made
made us oldest?
I like that they're going to bring back Jared Dudley to have a nice needed injection of youth. I don't think they're too old. I think they're going to have to do some managing of players and manage, because it's all relative. I mean, like LeBron was playing at an MVP level before Solomon Hill took his ankle out, and like, okay, yeah, he's old. He's still LeBron. You're not asking Carmelo Anthony to carry a team. You're asking to play 17 minutes a night and do exactly what he did in Portland last year, which was pretty good.
Right.
And, Wayne Ellington is going to be expected to stand out and shoot like he did in Detroit. I mean, like the age thing, I think, is overrated in the sense that you can get focused on the numbers and not see who the players are and what they're expected to do. It's a little concerning because guys tend to drop off really fast when they get older. So if there is decline, it could come quicker.
Recovery from injury can be slower,
stuff like that.
Right.
But it can be slower in general.
Yeah, I don't think the age thing is going to be an issue. And I love they did as well in the free agent market as I think you possibly could, given what they had. And I think like the Kendrick Nunn thing, for example, is fantastic. It's my favorite of all the signings that they made. Sits right behind Russell really well as a backup point guard. I think they can actually play some minutes together. I'm just a big fan of Nunn in terms of what he's been able to do in a relatively young NBA career. I think they got a great deal on that one.
Yeah, I love the Nunn. I think you guys hit it out the park with free agency. I like the move for us. I know the fit is going to be rough, but I think the talent is going to trump or take over everything else. So I like the sign that you guys did make. And before we get to Kuzma, I could probably ask you about Kuzma all day because he's such a polarizing player. That's another guy
he's not even on the team anymore, Ed, and we spent like 15 minutes talking about him on Monday's show, Andy?
Yeah, he was the third segment for Monday's show. He did a Twitter AMA and had some thoughts about what Wizards fans can expect from him. And he said a lot more than I showed the last couple of years. And, and that in a lot of ways embodies what Kuz has been the last couple of years. He clearly believes that he could do more in a counting stat kind of way, which really translates to scoring, like, being higher up on the totem pole in terms of options. And, we saw that early in Kuz's career, granted on bad teams where somebody had to score, but he also, as a young guy, had a legitimately impressive bag of tricks in terms of scoring that he hasn't relied on as much the last couple of years, because with LeBron there and with AD there and, the lesser degrees, a guy like Montrezl Harrell, Dennis Schroeder, he hasn't been asked to do as much. And he was told, really, we need you to be a higher end role player and really start developing yourself in other aspects, particularly defensively. And to Kuz's credit, as much as he believes he could be doing more in that, pecking order way, he turned himself into a way better defensive player. Like his rookie year, he was a train wreck. Like he could barely stay on the floor without just immediately hurting you defensively. He is now a more than credible defender. He's become very switchable. He's become much more alert off ball. He's become a better rounded player. I think what's going to be really interesting with Kuz moving forward is, okay, all these different elements of your game that you've been able to grow, he's yet to be able to put them all together, like as a more complete player, game to game to game, being able to do all of it. Can you do that? And this team, if nothing else, that he's going to be playing with the Wizards, offers him more opportunities to do that. So it'll be interesting to see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and before that's great insight about Kuzma. I do want to learn more about him defensively. But before we get into that, and I do want to ask your way too early record prediction and championship. But before we get to that, this episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. Why endure often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning like is your Odyssey an LX or an EX, and wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer, choosing only the brand their warehouse happens to carry? You have computers with access to rockauto.com at home and in your pocket. Save time and money when using Rock Auto. Why choose 30%, 50%, or even 100% more for some of the parts from a chain auto store or car dealership? For example, a Honda Odyssey fuel pump is $353 from a chain store, but it's only $216 from Rock Auto. I know you guys have gotten your fuel pumps too.
That's the only place I get my fuel pumps.
I actually collect them now. They're such a good deal. I don't even put them in my cars. I just put them in storage.
Yeah, absolutely.
Too good a deal.
Yeah, it's too good to beat at Rock Auto. Go explore their easy-to-use website today to find the solution to your auto part needs. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck, right, locked on in there. How did you hear about us box, so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need at rockauto.com.
David Harrison here, the Locked On Washington Football Team podcast, celebrating with you a 21-grain salute to a less boring sandwich thanks to Dave's Killer Bread. I don't know about you guys, but when I eat pizza, I eat it for the toppings, not the crust. And when I eat a sandwich, it's for what's inside the bread, not for the bread. But when I throw a sandwich on 21 whole grains and seeds, thin sliced bread from Dave's Killer Bread, it is the epitome of addition by subtraction. That thin sliced bread lets me focus on what's inside the sandwich, but also adds to the sandwich with killer taste, killer texture, killer nutrition, a subtle sweetness, and a seed-coated crust. Dave's Killer Bread is America's #1 organic bread for a reason. It tastes so stinking good. Dave's Killer Bread is made with the highest quality organic and non-GMO ingredients and is power-packed with whole grains, fiber, and protein. Visit daveskillerbread.com to learn more and look for Dave's Killer Bread in the bread aisle of your local grocery store.
All right, so I do want to get to you guys way too early because now we're going to focus on the Wizards players instead of what you guys got, the Russell Westbrook trade, and it was a crazy 5-team trade that finally got sorted out on, I want to say, was it Friday, and the trade happened like draft night, so it took about I feel like it was a week that took the whole 5-team trade to finally process. But what are you guys feeling? Are you guys feeling very confident about the championship? Because I think the Western Conference, you have to work. I think you guys would beat the Suns. They made it to the championship last year, and I feel like I think it's really against you guys, against the two top teams in the East with the Bucks and the Nets. I don't really see another team in the Western Conference. I mean, you could correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. It's with Kawhi on the shelf to start the season at least, and probably, at the very least, he's not going to be Kawhi Leonard most of the year. And if he comes back in the playoffs, it's hard to. He's instantly just going to turn into that guy. And then Jamal Murray on the shelf for much of the season. Like, I actually think the East is going to be far more competitive from a top-level championship standpoint than the West is. I agree with you. I think the Lakers, and Andy and I have talked about this on the show, I think the Lakers, if Davis doesn't get hurt, I think they beat the Suns. And so as bad and as raggedy as this year was, the Lakers, if Davis stays healthy, I think make it to the finals. I don't know if they win, but I think they get there. As I don't know, curious, whatever the right word is with the Russ thing, as I am, I still don't know who beats them. It's not going to, the Clippers without Kawhi, I don't think are going to do it. I don't think Denver without Jamal Murray can do it. Utah obviously has some work to do. I think the Lakers would be better than Phoenix. I would pick them to be. So it's like you start going down the line. it's not that I think the Lakers are flawless, and I definitely think teams in the East, and the right team in the West could beat them. I just don't know who that team is yet. So at the very least, I'd pick them to make the finals.
Yeah, if nothing else, I don't think there's a clear head and shoulders favorite in the West. Any team above anybody else, it's pretty wide open. And at least for the time being, when you start thinking about it that way, you start looking at things that could break the tie. And one factor that could break the tie, if all these teams are relatively even, is just pure talent. And it's hard to beat the pure talent of LeBron, Anthony Davis, Russell Westbrook, assuming everybody is healthy. The Lakers, like we talked about, have more of a challenge in terms of getting all these pieces on the same page and getting everything working fluidly. Like, you bring in Russell Westbrook to this mix, that is a high degree of difficulty. But in theory, you do that because it's worth the effort. And if you're right about that calculation, that it's worth the effort, then by definition, Russ, LeBron, AD, that's going to be damn near impossible to stop.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. I really just think it's the West. I do want to see them play Giannis and the Bucks, and see them play of course against Kevin Durant, James Harden.
Yeah. Oh my God.
That's going to be
that's the one
league,
everybody
let's be
wants.
honest. The league, they've got to rig this so it's Lakers-Nets finals, right? I mean, just the storylines alone. You've got LeBron versus both KD
right
and Kyrie.
Mm-hmm.
Then you've got Russ against KD and Harden. You've got New York, LA. I mean, the league's been losing money the last couple of years. I mean, come on, there's got to be some strings pulled to make this. It's what everybody wants anyway.
It's too much. It's almost too much.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, Brooklyn versus Los Angeles, like you said.
Yet not enough at the same time. Yet
almost too much.
Yeah. Christmas Day is going to be the Christmas Day game. It's going to be the Easter game.
I think they're going to make them play 82 times.
82 times. It's just going to be every game.
It's going to be that.
Right. So let's get to the guys who the Wizards did acquire, so the listeners can learn more and get some more insight on guys like Kyle. I want to start with Kyle Kuzma. Like I said before, we probably could do a 10-minute, 15-minute segment just on Kyle Kuzma. I feel like he turned into this, not I guess like the scapegoat, or kind of like a whipping board, if you will. The national media pundits, they just kind of not bullying, but I think he was just an easy target. I did see him miss some layups, and he really regressed. I mean, 18 points a game in his sophomore season, and his rookie year was really good. Him and guys like Josh Hart looked good, and then it ended up being Brandon Ingram and Lonzo Ball after they left the Lakers. They look far ahead of Kyle Kuzma right now. So it just looked like he really regressed. I just kind of want to get you guys.
It's funny, he regressed as a scorer. I think that's fair to say. Although last year his shooting actually improved. He got his shooting percentage from 3-point range back up to a much more respectable level. I think what is it, 30-something? 37%, which is a lot better than 33, which is where he had been. And so that makes a huge difference. And so that part of his offensive game did improve last year. Was much closer to what he did as a rookie. But overall, yeah, his offensive game regressed. But as Andy mentioned earlier, everything else about his game got better. He became a better basketball player as he became a lesser scorer. And some of that's just based on his role. And I'm sure he's going to be asked about it, and I'm sure he's going to talk about it. He will attribute a lot of that to just how he was used, and playing with LeBron and playing with Anthony Davis and all that other stuff. And that he was asked to do things that weren't scoring, and that's why his numbers went down. And if he's asked to score more in Washington, he'll do it, and people will see that he's still that guy. But as a basketball player, I agree with Andy. I think he got significantly better over the last couple of years, even as his scoring went down. So if you can put both of those back together, then Washington's got a really good piece. Either way, they get a good basketball player. Whether they got a guy who can be, a reliable 18-a-night scorer, I think that's the big question that's sort of going to define, the next 6 or 7 years of Kuzma's career.
A lot of what makes Kuzma polarizing, it's connected to the basketball, but I think it really starts with the persona, and then that bleeds into the basketball.
The mesh shirts on Christmas.
Right. I was going to say, he is a very outward persona. He is somebody that has a star mentality, like in terms of the way he sees himself, in the way he presents himself, in ways that can be really entertaining. You know, I mean, he was somebody that Kobe identified. You know, they had this infamous steak dinner when Kuz was a rookie that, you know, that I think was Kobe in a lot of ways identifying somebody that he saw certain commonalities with mentality. And, you know, he's had a lot of high profile romances. I think he's still dating that model.
Winnie Harlow.
You know, I mean, that, like, you know, Kuz was saying that he's going to miss Nobu and Malibu during this AMA. And he said, like, yeah, there's one in DC, but it's not the same. And you know what? He's right, Ed. It's not the same. Like, the one in DC is not the same as Malibu. Like, we'd be lying if we said that there's no difference and Kuzma's talking out of his ass. But like,
but he didn't say like, oh yeah, there's this taco stand at the corner of whatever that I just love. And it's like, you know, he chose Nobu Malibu. It's like okay.
He's clearly serious right now. He's in serious mode because I saw the Wizards tweeted out a bunch of photos of Kuz, like, you know, introducing him to the fan base. Now this is all official, and he's got his hair cut really close to the head. It's his natural color. Like, this is serious mode for him right now, Ed, because he's making a new impression. Whatever you put the over under on for amount of time he changes his hair color, bet the over. I'm just telling you right now, just take the over. That will win. But stuff like that should not detract away from the idea that he's serious about basketball. He is. But it can make him an easy target when things aren't going well.
Yeah. I think you hit the nail on the head with that. And I want to ask you guys about KCP and Harold, but before we get to that, this episode is brought to you by Bet Online, the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your sports action. Just like you said, betting the over-under on Kyle Kuzma's hair color. I wish that was on there.
It could be. It might be.
Yeah,
Have you checked?
We got to call the Bet Online to see if they can put that on there. Also, baseball season is in full swing. You can track all the action at Bet Online. Get all the latest news, odds, and info for all your sporting needs, including MLB, NBA, NHL, and all your UFC action. Before the next pitch, head over to Bet Online on your laptop or mobile device and check out all the great sporting news, sign-up bonuses, and contest information. Don't sit on the sidelines anymore, as this is your chance to get into the game as teams prep for their runs to the playoffs. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet Online, they're your online sports experts. Use the promo code Locked On. The promo code is Locked On.
I'm Kevin Ostreicher, host of the Locked On Ravens podcast, and attention shoppers, we now have taste in the bread aisle, Dave's Killer Bread. That's right, an organic bread that doesn't need 3 spoonfuls of sriracha jam to delight your taste buds. Dave's Killer Bread is a 21-grain salute to the end of boring bread. A brand on a mission to make the most of every loaf, to rid the world of GMOs and artificial ingredients, and plant the seeds of good in all that they bake. But Dave's Killer Bread has done more than raise the bar on bread. In fact, Dave's Killer Bread was built on the belief that second chances can change lives when its founder, Dave, the guy with a guitar you see on every loaf, returned to the family bakery after 15 years in prison. Dave took that chance and ended up creating what would become the country's #1 organic bread while never forgetting his not-so-easy path. That's why at Dave's Killer Bread, they proudly practice second chance employment, hiring the best person for the job, regardless of criminal background. And by the taste of it, things have worked out rather well. Dave's Killer Bread. Bread amplified.
So back to Kuzma, I do want to ask you guys, I mean, you guys basically explained some of the Hollywood lifestyle. Do you think that did kind of get to his head? That's what I see from the outside looking at. I didn't get a chance to watch the Lakers game.
I don't think, Andy, and maybe you disagree. I don't think so, only because there was never any accompanying reporting or chatter about
do I think he leaned into it? Yeah.
Oh yeah, but I just think in terms of like the impact that it had on him as a player, I don't think. No. I mean, because there was never anything that went with it that was said like he wasn't doing the work, like he wasn't. No. In the gym, that he wasn't trying to, and really actually was serious about playing. And so to me, that's what matters. Like, guy wants to lean into the opportunities that come with playing in LA, and
he's a sharp
doing that.
Guy.
And, he gets it. He gets the marketing aspect of all of this stuff. And as long as it doesn't matter as a player, like
it also too, I think with Kuz, you have to remember when he was a rookie, he was part of a class, like a grouping of young kids with the Lakers, like Lonzo Ball, Josh Hart, Brandon Ingram, Julius Randle. And most of those guys were pretty quiet. Like they weren't really outward personalities. Kuzma was the only one that was kind of an external personality. And I think, local business, stuff like that, they recognize that. Certainly local media recognize that. Like he filled a role in terms of being a face for a lot of these guys, even though Randall, Ingram, Lonzo were all drafted considerably higher than him. They're much more reserved personalities. So in that sense, I think Kuzma was kind of filling a role that he was encouraged to do. And then from there, like he's a sharp guy. He's a smart guy. And I think he recognized, like, I've got real opportunities here in terms of marketability, in terms of raising my profile, that I'm kind of naturally wired for that stuff anyway. I'm going to jump all over it. And, good for him. Because like Brian said, I don't think it got in the way of basketball.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's good to hear. I think he will focus more on basketball in DC. I think that's the best for him. Cutting his hair. I mean, it in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really matter. But it's
not staying that way, Ed.
Yeah.
It's not. I can promise you, it's not.
Right. So last about Kuzma, what does he bring to DC? What are the best things that he brings? And if you could just talk about his defense again before we talk about Harrell and KCP.
Well, in theory, he's going to bring a lot of the defensive principles that he learned in LA. He said in this AMA, like, it's team game, and like everybody's got to be like, he learned a lot in terms of how good defensive teams operate. I don't expect him to, him and KCP and Harrell to a much less extent, but Montrez does some things in terms of drawing charges and all that are not bad, and he's obviously a good rebounder. But KCP and Kuz, I don't think can turn around that defense by themselves, but they'll be better, and they'll certainly help. And they have, at the very least, have some experience in terms of how to operate on that. There, there's some versatility there. That's been a big part of the Lakers defense over the last couple seasons. So he's developed into a pretty good defender. And he works at it. And so that part of it is I think going to work out. He's not going to make your defense go from the worst in like recorded human history to good, but he won't hurt you on that side of the ball. That's for sure.
Oh, wow. So that's good to know. The Wizards, we need as much defense as we can get. We were the worst team defensively, giving up 118 points a game. It was like a Globetrotter game or ABA game when we played defense out there. So let's talk about KCP and Harrell. I guess we'll group them together. Some guys that are not as polarizing as Kuzma, but they're still very interesting. Montrezl Harrell is a very interesting guy. Sixth man of the year. He's very vocal on Twitter. It sounded like he didn't get along with Frank Vogel towards the end of the year in the playoffs. So I just want to get some more information, because when the Wizards actually swept the Lakers this year, and there was the game that was in LA. I want to say AD did not play in the first game.
Certainly possible.
Yeah, right. Yeah, he didn't play in that first game, and Harrell was playing pretty well in the game, and he didn't play at all in that whole fourth quarter. So I just want to know what's the problem with that? Is that a concern for the Wizards too? Is he just unplayable in the fourth quarter? Is he unplayable in the playoffs? I mean, he rode the bench in the playoffs.
He's not somebody that you're going to be looking necessarily to anchor fourth quarter or high leverage moments in a game, just because he's not a good defender, and he's somebody that can be targeted. He's not big enough, really. I mean, he plays a small ball center, but that's really just offensively. He's able to beat guys off the dribble. He's really good around the rim.
He's a much more skillful player offensively than I think he gets credit for.
Because he does not play above the rim, like in terms of being in the paint, but he's really good at finishing in traffic. He's, like Brian said, very skillful in a lot of what he can do. He's good at getting offensive rebounds. He's got a ton of energy in general. The guy plays his ass off every second he's on the court, but he's a defensive liability in the sense that he's not big enough and strong enough to be a defensive small ball five, even as a small ball guy. But I don't think he's got good enough court awareness to really defend out on the perimeter. And certainly Frank Vogel went out of his way to try to avoid that from happening as much as possible. Like if the Wizards are looking to go back to the playoffs again this year, and that's one of their goals, in a lot of ways, I think Harrell is an innings eater. Like he's somebody that is going to be more valuable during the regular season than during the playoffs when matchups and scheming really start mattering. You know, I think that's something you just have to be accepting of as a Wizards fan. And, you know, he was brought in, if nothing else, just to make the money work, you know, for that trade. Because if you look at the roster for the Wizards, he's not necessarily filling a high, I think at least a high area of need. Like you guys have some front court. So, but he can be useful during the course of the season. And, you know, he definitely can help you guys get through 82 games. Like KCP is somebody, though, that I think you will see on the court during fourth quarters. Like that, you know, the Lakers, he was a staple in their closing units for the last 2 years, you know, on a team with championship aspirations. And he was ultimately one of the most reliable guys the Lakers had. And it's funny, you mentioned Kuzma being more polarizing than KCP or Trez. KCP's time in LA was an absolute roller coaster. There was a period where he was, I wouldn't even say polarizing, because most fans decided they hated him. Like there weren't even enough that decided they liked him. And he really had to work hard to win over that fan base. And he ultimately did. And that's another guy that plays exceptionally hard when he's on the court on both ends. Like, you know, he can do some shooting. He runs the floor extremely well. You know, he gets out on the break really well, and he defends really, really hard. But, you know, he was. So, yeah, that's ultimately something I think Wizards fans will enjoy about KCP. It's just the effort is always there. And I think it's something they'll respect.
Definitely. Yeah, him and Bill are good friends. I do remember seeing pictures of them doing a double date. Bill does have a house in LA as well. And I do remember KCP, the picture with him. He did play a game with an ankle monitor on his ankle.
Yeah, that was last year or 2 years ago now, I guess. I still can't figure out if last year is last year.
No, that was – I think that was his
first.
I think that was his first year in LA.
Oh, was that his? Oh, that was. Oh, you're right. That was the
Seal Beach
championship
Detention
season. It was
Center.
the season before. You're right.
That was, again, KCP had a lot of ups and downs.
Couldn't play out of California.
Yeah,
for like a month.
And he said like that was actually really difficult for him in terms of, you know, literally having to go to that, you know, jail.
Right. And his family wasn't out in California yet.
Right. And, you know, I'm sure it was embarrassing for him. I mean, there was a lot there that was difficult for him. But, you know, all in all, I thought his story as a Laker was really great to see, because he had to overcome a lot of adversity, and he had to win a lot of people over, particularly some fans that at times were frankly brutal towards him, like in ways that was pretty ugly to see. And by the end, I think he won a lot of them over, and it was awesome to see, because he's a good guy.
Right. And one last question about KCP. His shooting percentages were good, but there are some nights where he'll go 0 for 5. Is that true that he'll go like 0 for 5?
Oh yeah, sure. Like he has stretches. He might go 0 for a week. You know, he is not a, you know, sort of a consistent, you know, guy that you would think of as just, you know, stand outside, like Danny Green or Wayne Ellington or guys like that. You can kind of rely on month to month to shoot, you know, 37% one month, 39% the next, you know, 42 one month, back to 38, you know, but like it sort of stays in a reasonably predictable band. Like he does run hot and cold. He's not going to be a, you know, I don't think he's going to have like Kyle Korver-esque gravity. But he is a decent shooter, and, you know, and he's reliable enough in that way that, and it's been good enough, I think, on that side that you can show it's legitimate. That when you combine it with his defense and stuff like that, he's a pretty useful player. And, you know, he's a great kind of glue starter where you can, you know, especially if, and this is something the Lakers did really well, if you can keep him kind of contained into the things that he does really well, 3-point shooting, defense,
running the
stuff
floor
like that, running the floor, and not have, try to put the ball in his hands and have him isolate or make him a primary player offensively, he can be very effective. It's when you start asking him to do more than he really should that the results start to go a little wonky. But, if you tailor his role properly, he's a really good player. I mean, he's not not an elite guy, not an all-star, but just a solid player, and those make a huge difference for a team.
Right. And last one, who do you guys think will make the most impact out of the three? I like Trez a lot because he was 6th man of the year, and like you guys said, he just brings that fire.
It's not Trez, because Trez could take time away from Daniel Gafford, who I might keep in my fantasy league.
That is true.
And so I have a keeper. Gafford would be a 15th round pick this year. I think it's very important that he plays 30 minutes a night, and so I don't want anything that might interrupt that. I actually think it. From pure basketball impact standpoint, I actually think it could be KCP. I think he is the most likely to kind of come in and just be like, oh, you know what? He's just helpful. He's making a difference here. And
I think he's also the most likely to start among those three. I think he's the most likely to play the most minutes. That's the other thing about KCP.
Is just so crazy in Washington. I don't know how you divide up those minutes.
This is something else you guys should know about KCP. The dude is a horse. Like, he can play a lot of minutes, and he does not miss much time. Like, when KCP misses time for an injury, he can't get on the court because he is pretty good at staying out there, and he is somebody that does not seem to get tired for the most part. So that's another reason I think he's going to make the most impact. I think he's just going to be on the court the most.
Yeah, that's good to hear, because we've had some injuries in the past, and the thing that he's durable. And I'm a Daniel Gafford fan. I'm just such a huge Gafford fan. I can't believe it.
30, 35 minutes a night. Get all those other guys off the floor.
Right.
I need those numbers.
Yeah, and we still have Thomas Bryant, so we do have a crowded big man room. But I want to thank you guys
for Laker. Let him take his time. Thomas Bryant should take most of the season to come back. Right. Just my opinion.
And he was on your G League team. He was on the LA Defenders.
Yeah,
that is true.
Yeah, he was on the big team. He played. He was a good player.
Yeah, definitely. And this episode was brought to you guys by Locked On Bets. Betting on the NFL or NBA doesn't have to be a guessing game. If you listen to the new Locked On Bets podcast hosted by your boy Q and handicapping expert Lee Sterling, get daily picks, blowout specials, wrong team favorite picks, and Lee Sterling's lock of the day. Follow the Locked On Bets podcast brought to you by betonline.ag, wherever you get your podcasts. And I want to thank you guys for coming on. Make sure you guys watch Locked On Lakers. These guys do daily content, and their subscriber count is going up. So make sure you guys sub to them, and also hit the notification bell for anything Lakers news that goes on. Is there anything that you guys wanted to plug before you guys head out?
No, that was it.
No, I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
I'm excited about this notification bell thing. I got to learn more about that. I don't think I'm doing YouTube right.
Our subscriber count is not high enough in the DC area, as far as we know. So that's where we need to build. So thank you, Ed.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of I would say bandwagon Lakers fans in DC for sure.
We'll take them.
We'll take them.
We don't
That's
care.
fine.
We don't require blood oaths.
No,
man. We just want the subscription.
It's not a value judgment. Just subscribe to the channel.
No. Right. And everybody, make sure you guys subscribe to Locked On Wizards as well. And you guys have a great one.
Thanks.
Peace.
This episode is brought to you by Spotify Green Room. Have you ever listened to a podcast like this one and you wanted to bring up your own point or just chat with other people that are listening at the same time? Well, let me tell you about Spotify Green Room. This is the first social audio platform made just for sports fans. The app is free to download, and once you're in, you can talk with us, other fans, athletes, insiders in real time about your favorite sport or team. Download the app, currently available on iOS devices. Create a profile, link your Twitter, join one of the groups for the latest league updates, and then you'll see us there. Spotify Green Room, changing the way we talk sports.